Welcome to the Sound of Movement podcast. Today we're continuing our discussion about injuries, and today's topic is all about rehab programs and when you need one. We often coach people that we don't want to think about being in either rehab or in training. We want people training all the time, and this is how we get it done. What's up, everyone? It's time to rock. If you're new to the tribe, Rich is behind the mix. And I'm Rad Burmeister. We are Unity Gym, experts at turning driven people into athletes. This episode is brought to you by the Unified Movement System, the only online program efficiently balancing strength, flexibility, and fitness so you can unleash your inner athlete. You can get daily coaching by us, plus our epic Foundations Prep program and revolutionary structural balance blueprint to create your ideal program and optimize your performance. As a valued listener, use the link in the description to get your first month of UMS online coaching free. Also, I'm excited to announce that we have an epic 72-hour flash sale for our rehab programs coming up this weekend, starting this Friday, the 26th of March, Australia time. And for 72 hours, you can get any of our rehab programs at a massive discount. Now, before we get started, a warm welcome if you're on the live stream in the UMS Movement Mastermind Facebook group. Leave a comment and we'll send you some love. Remember, if you're listening to this, anyone can join and interact with us from that group. Lastly, shout out to our YouTube athletes catching the replay. Hit the like button and support the channel, and subscribe if you like what you see. And hi to everyone listening to the podcast. How are you today, Rich?
Good, Rad. Good, thank you very much. I'm excited to talk about more injuries today.
Yeah, it's a good topic. A lot of people want to know about this stuff because so many people struggle with injuries. I certainly have myself, and that's really what today's show is about. Today's show, we're thinking about, what can we do today? How can we add value for people? And I've dealt with a lot of injuries myself, and I've overcome a lot of them. And my success with rehabilitating my injuries, and Yanni as well, is what really turned into the UMS rehab programs. It was, we worked with amazing physiotherapists to learn how to deal with injuries that we had. Then we successfully overcame them. And then we used the knowledge that we'd gained, paired with our own understanding of periodization and program design, and created the rehab programs that we have. And the first one that I had, the first injury that I dealt with of recent times that really threw a spanner in the works for me was forearm tendinopathy, golfer's elbow and tennis elbow. And, through that process of learning and understanding those injuries and coming up with, a strategy that really, really worked, we were able to develop our forearm and, the golfer's and tennis elbow rehab program. And it's been really amazing. The next one that I dealt with was a torn meniscus on my right knee. I had to rehabilitate a torn meniscus. And then the next one that I had to deal with was a slap tear and a torn rotator cuff in my shoulder. So they're all pretty common injuries that a lot of people suffer with. But if you don't know how to deal with them properly, those injuries can really be the end of the activities that you love to do. For a lot of people, it really just stops them dead in their tracks. And that's when it's time to be, thinking like, maybe I need a rehab program for this. And when I was talking to Richard about what it is that sets our rehab programs aside and what the knowledge that I got from the physios that I worked with to learn how to rehabilitate these injuries, what I learned was the importance of reteaching the body how to do things properly. Like with my knee injury and my shoulder injury, the strategy from the start was, and it was very, very quick. The phases of the programs that I did lasted for about 3 or 4 weeks. It was very, very quick to progress. But in the first couple of weeks, it was all about going back to the basics. The way it was explained to me by my physiotherapist was that, for example, with my shoulder injury, with my slap tear, that when you do an injury like that, the systems that stabilize the shoulder, the systems that hold the scapula in place, that hold the humerus in place, they forget how to do their job. They basically, it goes into this survival mode where everything just kind of locks up, and they forget how they work synergistically together to create movement and stabilize the joint. And you basically have to reteach them how to do their job. And that was a real epiphany for me because I didn't understand that. I always thought that, when you have an injury that you're meant to just rest it and not do anything until the pain goes away, and then you just start doing the things you want to do again slowly. And I was taught that that is really the worst approach, that what you have to do is you have to start moving straight away, but it's at a very regressed manner. It's about, reteaching the systems how to do what they're meant to do. And then once the systems understand how to do what they're meant to do again, which that's what they basically do intrinsically, before you have these injuries, then from there you start strengthening yourself in the big movements from the ground up. And that approach was revolutionary for me, and it completely allowed me to overcome some really, really bad injuries and issues. How has your understanding of injury and injury rehabilitation changed since working with Phil and Nilesh and the guys, Richie?
So Phil and Nilesh have both helped me out a lot in understanding sort of the strategy or the mindset behind going and rehabilitating an injury or just improving the function of your movement. It comes down, like you were saying, a large part of it is going back to like the basic understanding of the movement and perfecting that technique, whether it's pre-injury, before it actually happens, or post-injury, rehabilitating the injury. It comes down to understanding what the movement is, what you should be really recruiting in the movement, and if you have an injury, understanding what you've been doing incorrectly in order to fix it. So, for example, in my sort of injury journey, I went through tendinopathy, same thing in my forearm, way too many pull-ups in my program, but I believe it was a large part of how I was actually doing them, and it forced me to learn a lot more about the pull-up, where you should be expressing your strength, what muscles should be doing the majority of the load, and that tweaked my technique. So over time, rather than doing them how I used to do them, I changed it so that I was recruiting the right muscles in the right order, the right time, and at the right intensity, so that eventually I got over this pain and I started to strengthen my forearms in the right way. And I've also had, tendinopathy in my quads as well, unfortunately. I've had it all over my body, really. But I think the quads, my knee, my right knee, and then my left, was one of the worst ones that I've had because it really stuck around for a while, a good year or so. And I was sort of in and out of that process. And it came back to me sort of understanding what I was doing in my programming, overall like load capacity for my knees and the techniques I was using. And analyzing that, I changed the technique I was using. I went for something that was a little bit less knee dominant in the movement, and over time, over weeks and months, it slowly became better, with the right loading. And there was a few errors along the way which set me back, but following that advice that I got from Phil with the loading, the technique, it eventually, my knees are feeling really good these days. Like every now and then I might get a few niggles here and there, but ultimately they're way better than where they were. And it's from just analyzing the basic movement pattern that I was doing, and the programming.
Yeah, it's really amazing, isn't it? How so many injuries that we've experienced just came down to a technique thing, and that's a pretty big thing to say, because we're personal trainers. We know a lot more about programming and technique than the average person.
Yep.
But by really refining those techniques, by realizing that we've got these injuries from the way that we're training, and going back a couple of steps like regressing what we're doing and focusing on refining everything, has really been the cornerstone in us being able to come out of these injuries and really charge forward with our training. Like my tendinopathy, man, in my forearms, I dealt with it for the better part of 2 years, I reckon. And that there was a long period of that time where I could not do any pull-ups at all. Like that, it was just killing me, and golfer's elbow turned into tennis elbow, and that meant that I It was preventing, with the golfer's elbow, I could do pull-ups and bicep curls from a more of a neutral and a pronated grip. But then when I got the tennis elbow, I couldn't do them in a pronated grip or a neutral grip. And it was just, it was so hard to deal with. But because we dealt with it the right way, we learned how to do it the right way. We created these rehab programs that we use. I remember that I reflected on it after about a year of thinking, oh my God, I haven't felt even a shred of tendinopathy for such a long time. And I'm training at a really high intensity now and with a high volume. And it's a really good feeling to have been able to come through that, isn't it? When you get those injuries that they really stop you in your tracks and you think without surgery, without, medical intervention that we've been able to overcome them and move forward. And yeah, I think that's what I really wanted the message in this show to be, is that you often hear us talking about, and especially with Phil and Nilesh, about the strategy for getting people out of this injury identity. It's not like, oh, you can't train, you're in rehab. But at the same time, there is a place for when you have to do a very specific program that is going to help you to get back to the ground level of the kind of training that you want to be doing. And the answer is not to stop. The answer isn't to go, I'm not going to train anymore. The answer is to understand how you need to modify your technique, how you need to program differently, and get you back to where you want to be as quick as you can.
Yeah, and that's why Phil and Nilesh are so valuable, because they give you that plan.
Yep.
They really have a great understanding of these injury mechanisms, and for us simple people, we really turn to those people to help us out.
Yep. Yeah, I honestly believe that out of the majority of personal trainers, I'm probably one of the most experienced and knowledgeable with injury rehabilitation than most of the trainers out there. I'm not saying all of them, but I know a lot of personal trainers, and most of them know bugger all compared to what I do about dealing with shoulder injuries, tendinopathy and knee injuries and back injuries, because those are things that I've had to deal with myself and gotten over.
It's really a blessing in disguise, isn't it? Because you gain so much wisdom from these failures that you go through with training.
Yep.
You learn these lessons of what not to do, and ultimately it makes you better.
Yep.
So you can avoid that later. You can imagine what it would be like if you just didn't get an injury, right? You just wouldn't have any answers, because you'd never need to seek those answers out.
Yeah. I certainly had no answers before I had the injuries. I just was like, I don't know. Well, guys, we're going to tomorrow's going to be a great opportunity for you, because our injury rehab programs are actually purchased primarily by physiotherapists and personal trainers and practitioners, because they're so effective. And what we find is that a lot of people that make their bread and butter by doing this want to know our strategy. So if you fall into that category, or if you're somebody that's dealing with injuries and having a hard time to get over them, then starting tomorrow for the next 72 hours is going to be an opportunity to grab some really amazing programs at a really reduced price. So check it out, and we will be back tomorrow to wrap this week up of Injury Chat.
Health is about performance, not just body image.
You better be willing to accept what you're going to have to do to get there.
We'll start focusing on movement goals, strength goals, flexibility goals.
When you nail that skill, that's there forever.
The body image goal doesn't get you that
It's
far.
the consistency and frequency that's going to get you there. It's not the intensity.
There's no shortcuts to mastery and movement. Destination doesn't change overnight, but your direction will.
The gym is not the place to beat up the body that you hate. It's the place to build the body that you love.
We are the gym that teaches people how to move instead of just exercise, because we believe that health is about performance, not just body image.